G'day, mate. Yeah, got a really great show, which a lot of people have been asking more a bit about codependency and what is that sort of thing, and narcissism, narcissistic disorder. Interesting, of course, narcissism itself just means self-love, and self-love, that's fine. It's just that where it comes to be a bit of a disorder. Yeah. Do you have a feeling that that's something which is a topic that should be, we could talk a bit about, and maybe talk a bit about it, and how do you manage things like that? But first, sort of kind of, how can you define what this is really? Yeah. Have you heard about codependency?
I've definitely heard of it.
What if you were to say something of, like, what would you imagine like that might be defined as?
Oh yeah, well, when two people, they kind of like use each other.
Yeah, pretty much. In fact, actually, where self-autonomy might not necessarily be as can be. Where somebody practices whole brain functioning patterns, it's all about being in self-autonomy and assisting others be in self-autonomy. Yeah. A lot of positive patterns is to do more where helping someone is and things, and those are things which is good. Only, of course, where someone is helping someone who's abusive, often, boundaries may not be sort of set, and those sorts of things. It could be a bit toxic type of relation, and but how does somebody manage those sorts of things, which, for instance, like where narcissism is as a disorder, you could just imagine, well, a certain amount of striving for success is very good, and being able to recall, per se, various things that you've done, but exaggerating success, or having to just be a focus on success, and not having to be able to process things that can have been lost, and these sorts of things. But we get in touch more where people are, where someone is able to be more vulnerable, and most aren't, or get into a circumstance where they're vulnerable. But then when you are, it's like you're open in love, and service is the first sign of love. So what goes on where something happened like that, where someone has a superficial type of relationship with others, and can base it upon look or something that's like that, and there's a lack of empathy, typical. And how could that come to be, sort of where somebody has a pervasive pattern where they're not really very empathic? Empathy, of course, really comes along because you saw your parents' face. You only could see maybe 18 inches, and up for the first period of time in your life, all you could see more or less up close was your parents' face and facial expressions. And those facial expressions all engage muscles today, and nerve, which occupied gills in fish and things, which cause the body to be prepared for some external condition that's going on, and preparing the body internally. And there's fear, flight, fight, or fight sort of response that can have been. And so where something exists like that, it can have shut the frontal cortex down. And when somebody's practicing whole brain functioning, they're doing what they can to look at patterns that they have, and to see that there's not unnecessary, exaggerated types of success going on, and or a single focus on non-stop on self. Someone's able to ask another about themselves and allow others to participate in conversation and things, and you've got really good communication skills. But you've got things going on which really is a magnification of aversion wrongfully, and that magnifiedness of a condition which can cause people to not have good success in communication, over time causes someone to feel not confident, and loss of confidence in a feeling of self-worth, not being present as much as would be. And so then excessive types of conditions go on where superficialness could be because somebody's not looking within. But how does this all begin? And what are some of the forces that can we look at in a modern time understanding today? And one of the things that comes up is called a surrogate spousal relation, where children are coming out of single-parented types of conditions, but also where a parent was more favoured against another, and these sorts of things. It's probable that a surrogate spousal relation could have been passed on to the child. And what's that? It's really an incestual condition of bringing topic or subject up, which isn't something which a child could navigate or have a situational awareness about. And because things could be brought up where a parent no longer having a spouse takes it upon the children to pick up the slack of the spousal relation. And so things are spoken and talked about and things and such, like as if a child maybe is an adult or can have situational awareness. And it can cause a child at a young age to feel that they really need to help save their parent or help protect their parent and this sort of thing. But how can they, sort of thing? And so a great dissatisfaction could come to be, but the biggest thing that happens is what's called emotional overlay, an overlaying of an emotion. And so a subject matter that's brought up isn't clean of itself. And so something pervasive could be going on where somebody gets noticed to be more depressed, or they really aren't able to sort of fit in, or a whole range of selective restrictive violations go on where someone brings a subject up but it's a complex equivalent, or somebody brings a subject up and talks about something but you can't quite understand what the meaning of it is, because nominalizations, meaning some action is supposed to be being talked about but it's been talked about like as if it's a noun. And then, of course, you've got unspecified verbs. So all of us really to be listening to the heartfelt level of what's being communicated versus, most people are really learning how to articulate things, so things can, that they're better off. And so where surrogate spousal relatedness was inducted, you could see a range of things which somebody can have not been aware that was emotional incestual type of a condition. And it's typical that where personality disorder is, you've got some part which needs to be integrated. And how can you get to that part but make it clean? This is work which often I do to help people with sessions, which I can provide a structure which can cause someone to have a new behaviour generator, for instance. And so many children growing up in an environment like that are pretty bored and fairly restless as well. And in life transitions where stress is, all sorts of control types of behaviours come out. And this is a trauma reenactment syndrome because somebody doesn't want to be the victim, and they take on the behaviour of the victor. And so the victor controlled, and the 4 types of violence that is ongoing, what somebody does inside is the first form of violence is a violence which somebody is dissociating in life. They're not too present. They have a poor capacity to be able to relate. They could stare at people, not make others uncomfortable. All sorts of things. It's sort of like an Asperger type of a condition where, because a lot of mucus type of food was eaten, extraneous amounts of rock salt and all sorts of calcium carbonate that's been put into all these fake milks. And so these rock salts all are causing cystic fibrotic types of conditions because it's really not anything that's meant to be in the body, disturbing the sodium chloride channel and so thickening up fluid. And so where someone is being underneath a surrogate spousal relatedness without their thinking about anything or anybody being able to point something out, they could have been sorting information in a not a congruent manner, but like not even knowing what congruency is, which you can feel that something isn't congruent or is congruent. You can feel this. But can you define the fact that something happened before which wasn't parallel or is and to the moment, and then something is parallel to the moment, and so this is congruent, but if things that go in sequence like that aren't parallel to each other, you can basically say that the syntax, the structure of the behaviour is incongruent. And so you and I, we have three choices, and rather than dissociating, you could be looking at things in the way that you respond. Whole bone patterning is like always you're going to sort for agreement. And so where somebody's not sorting for agreement, that's sorting for polarisation, they're trying to polarize the person, they're sorting for the opposite, what doesn't fit, what's obscure, what somebody didn't say, or what somebody, it's imagined that somebody didn't do, or, so it's aversive, and where aversion has been as a response, it's typical that somebody could just be getting everything through I don't want to come through a try but must only, and not for that to be positive, which it could be. One could learn how to use all those words more positively, of course, but coming from a positive sense of everything inside yourself from your heart. So the first type of violence where something is which is passed on to children, and we then do those sorts of things because that's what the victor did. He didn't want to be the victim, and so the victor dissociated from you, left the room, left the conversation, was doing things all the time like that to control. And sometimes something need to be, that can be healthy, but not as a pattern ongoing pervasive. If you recognise this, change it, because you're going to have a better relation. You can be focused on agreement. When you never thought about focusing on agreement, you start focusing on agreement now, and I know the quality of your life is going to be improved incredibly. So the second form of violence that everybody does, that's practiced, it's just sort of like a trauma reenactment syndrome, is a combination of these violent things. The first one, of course, is just dissociated. Being dissociated meaning you always sort away from, you sort outside, you're looking out there, and so these are all levels of immaturity and levels of emotion, not having necessarily the ability to be sort of managed. And then when things are like that, then people set things up around them that is giving them the opportunity to be able to survive given the circumstances of things. But it's a typical thing that most people are going to experience, not necessarily having too many friends where something is going on that's narcissistic disorder, meaning self-love disorder, where somebody is exaggerating things, mostly because that they couldn't feel shame, guilt, and loss and embarrassment as positive learning experience. And when somebody isn't allowed to have those experiences, that feeling, only sets of rules come to be, which is broken, and no consequence exists. And so when a child grows up where you are in an environment where you're taught that people are basically good versus people are bad, those who are taught people are basically good, they're really going through life and don't have to have all these coping strategies and everything. So right off the cuff, there's just some few things in the parenting style and way of going about things leading to conditions of life which is integrated and associated and congruent. Integration is like where the parts are more in flow, but where parts are not in flow, there's things that you could look at where you are to learn more whole brain functioning patterning, which we could talk just a little about in this program. But it's really repackaging things and being able to look at what you've done. There's a post-traumatic stress disorder, past something that was stressful and some disorder that could have come about because of that past traumatic stress disorder, and modelness of codependency, and degrees of narcissism. And so all of that develops more from childhood trauma that wasn't resolved and a fear, flight, fight sort of type of response. But where somebody had the rug pulled out from underneath them as a child, as a young one, so early in life, and abandonment can have been felt and things that's like this, it's sudden that somebody can decide they're damned if they do, damned if they don't, and so it creates a learned helplessness. So even where choices exist, it's that somebody doesn't take those choices. And the part that's the terror, which is the error, once that's recognised and acknowledged, that's one part to be integrated with another part where somebody really learns more other ways of loving. And these two parts then come together and someone no longer is in a learned helpless state. Somebody spiritual could assist to help where somebody is. If somebody's not taking a spiritual approach, I doubt very much it can really have as proper a good success. But where these conditions that go on and pervasive into adulthood, like these ways of controlling, which so far we've covered dissociation. We talked that people distract. Distractors really bring up other topics and make a sacred cow the topic that you brought up. So it's sort of like they're distracting and things like this to control. These are control freak types of things where somebody's doing this over and over, and this is the way they manage everything to get people to do things or get things done, rather than strategy, which is motivating, which is more of an internal generator and not engaging sort of control types of things. Another type of violence which goes on within ourselves is where we question ourselves to make ourselves smaller. And so you can see what do you do but to question the negative things in a positive way so that you can clear up what's negative, so that you really have a pattern to be able to come back into your own self-autonomy. And so interrogatedness is sort of where questioning or things would be internal dialogue-wise or external, which causes someone else's model or your own model to feel much smaller. And so these things then have responses, which is really an emotional sort of dysregulation. And so it's really recovering from these emotional dysregulation type of thing and being able to manage emotion. Who's mature is really able to manage emotion. And so where shame and guilt and embarrassment was allowed in childhood, and that's positive in the way that it shapes character, that some consequences existed for various things that could have been done. Somebody really learns correctly, whereas if it's not, that somebody's allowed to have those emotions, because if somebody says, oh no, that's adversive, you shouldn't be feeling that way. So some stuckness is where an intelligence exists in every emotion, and it's really something is there that was positive, adaptive, given the circumstance that it was taken aboard, yet can have secondary negative consequences as a behaviour pattern. So when somebody practices whole brain functioning, they immediately start to live a better life, really, because you're winning friends and influencing people. Otherwise, there's a whole big old flashback that can have been going on emotionally, and where shame actually is, and guilt that can't be got at. And so where flashback is somebody doesn't care too much to be suddenly felt less, where somebody already does feel less, and so that can cause somebody to be more predatorial and abusive to others, to cover over and be intimidating, which is the fourth form of violence. So there's these four forms of violence to control, and whereas if you use a model operator possibility like I wonder if is it possible, of course, if you're speaking, you really love it that somebody is listening and be able to listen to things. If you're giving people choice, they're going to be able to listen better. But personality disorders really are really cleared away because someone can look at order instead of the person and allow more healthy relations and to be active in listening and this sort of thing rather than being egocentric, and yet to be more humble where one is and set boundaries and that's healthy. You're really not in a mode where if you could look and see that somebody's wanting to be superior or coming from feeling inferior, superiority, inferiority, these are sorts of things which cause someone to just be continuously having sought attention. And acknowledging, not having an ease of ability to be able to acknowledge the feeling of others is like an example of Asperger's. And so when somebody can take on new information, it shows that someone no longer is in a dissident state, where you can see that you present new information to someone that would definitely change their view, but it doesn't in their response. If you can see that happen twice, it's really a state of dissidence that's existed, probable more as a pattern. But to long-term positions where relationship is and one's capacity to have rapport and positively cause opportunity to be not of some exaggeratedness, but in balance and in relation to others. Otherwise, there's a real need going on where attention is being sought, isn't it? You can see it. And when somebody's got pattern recognition, you can see these things and you can adjust those things because of it. But otherwise, many will be just taken by material types of world and be avoiding the communication and things like that. So it's not that someone can't feel unique or that they don't have some specialty and that somebody could have something great. These are things which is narcissistic, meaning self-love. And self-love is perfect. It's when it comes to be more of a disorder where a magnified over-the-top comes to be. And so you've got high status types of things which influence someone that's such, and assisting kind of is service, and service is the first sign of love, like we were talking about. But, and so being congruent is like a parallel processiveness. Being integrated is a flow between all the parts. Being associated is being present more for yourself and for others. And learning how to motivate, which is about learning, growth, achievement, recognition. These are things which you can get most everything done where something is engaging more an internal generator. Otherwise, a narcissistic personality disorder could be being displayed, and that has impacted all one's core experiences. And it really is because someone had to feel more special or they had to pump themselves up. And it is all coming about because somebody really didn't have a proper sense of confidence for themselves. And so you've got enablers and you've got enforcers sort of thing. An enabler is someone who will forgo their own rights and care and just to please someone else when that can be just really detrimental. ongoing because somebody's really not in their own self-autonomy, which is sort of an example of a codependency. And so it's really in eye awareness where you have an empty centre and you simply just care. I mean, that's the primary way to be. Otherwise, all sorts of exploitation could have come about which you're looking and seeing in life, and coming about because someone can feel entitled beyond what they should, certainly feel entitled, and yet really be empty and not have achieved anything at all, but come across real confident, like they really know the wherewithal, but a very deep Dunning-Kruger type of a condition of anosognosia where who's there doesn't know what the condition is that they have. And it's typical that somebody like that really doesn't have proper empathy because they've got such going on internal that how can you be able to be receptive? In whole brain patterning, you're able to be receptive, whereas limited mind function, where you're really into the don't, like, can't, should, try, but must only, you've got adversity building a network which only is connected to adversity, and so it neurologically inhibits pleasure and the frontal cortex as a result. So most people who really are in a limited mind function state, they're not ever getting into their frontal cortex. You can give them new information to the person and they won't change what they've thought. You could say what you feel and feel, and they can't take even aboard how you feel or adjust themselves from what they thought you felt and things. But you've got toddlers as babies who could be sad, and a sad baby is someone who's had the rug pulled out early on, and they're damned if they don't, and so it's sort of sad, which that's not a natural at all. And then you've got the angry toddler, which really would throw a aggressive type of domestic violent type of a condition, and control by being the most flexible, you see. And really, its challenges really, if you could imagine in whole brain functioning, you're looking at how you go about setting boundaries and how love and self-esteem exist. And typical it would be that somebody has behaviours which is pleasant, but not because you've got low esteem and you're doing what you can to have pleasing behaviours, yet who's there is really abusive and controlling. And so, it's learning how to set boundaries, learning how to actually turn things around, which we're going to talk just a little bit about. But that's basically how much secureness that you feel inside really is your capacity so easily to go avoid conflict. Whereas somebody who's stuck inside, somebody who's adverse, how simple is it and easy is it for them not to have avoided conflict and had a lot of conflict and only conflictedness? And so a pattern of having to please and these sorts of things, excessive or whatever, and not necessarily noticing what one has, which is your own self-esteem, and how does that work where everyone else is? How are we doing, Lukey?
Ooh, well, David, when you texted me earlier with the topic, I knew it was going to be a doozy.
It's a very good topic because it's such a really good skill we have to be able to have pattern recognition for ourselves and others, and that we can function better together. Because certainly it is that as you search for agreement where you can get agreement. And it's certain that there's ways that somebody could set these boundaries and things softly, have gentleness, kindness more. Whereas otherwise, adversity is just so quick to be knee-jerking, and because it's going to cause limited mind function and that sort of thing, it's a chronic type of condition going on where somebody's only done things by controlling others rather than actually coming from an internal generator and motivating people and motivating others around, motivating yourself. So adversity with don't, won't, can't, should, try, but, must only, and all the selective restrictive violations that go on, putting freeze spikes through the brain, and whatever was going on, interrupting whatever was a pattern that you could have a thought or a flow from. And so part of the reason of going on behind someone's lack of ability to be really good at public speaking is because they've got internal dialogue, which is inhibiting areas of their brain. So somebody who's really in exceptional brain function, that all these areas that are inhibitory are disappeared and not present, where somebody's really excellent at what they do. And so where somebody has a pattern of internal dialogue and a lot of don't, won't, can't, should, try, but, must only has existed there, and patterns of polarization in the processing information, rather than agreement with a condition or simple agreement, which is the three ways that you can process agreement with condition, and polarization of the three ways. So the first two ways that we just talked about, those are ways that you will always be getting everything that you care for. And what's the reason to be going into a polarization? And there can be some value where somebody polarizes, of course, like in a sale where you can cause someone to feel what the benefit to them is of something which they own and have, versus something that you're selling to the person. And so where somebody's really good at sales, and they're really good, like teachers often, people will say, make the best partners in life because they're always in front of faces which are doing what they can to correct slippery slope, where somebody has just gone on to consider that something exists, but they haven't examined that some fact that has to be doesn't exist at all, which is slippery slope, or straw man argument, which is you're always being given two alternatives, polarized, and they're asking you generally to polarize to the last choice, typical, and in so doing accept the first choice sort of thing, which neither of those choices could be something which satisfies you see. And so these are things to be learned more, to have more logic, of course, but blurred boundaries is really where the imbalance could often be and where relation is. And then what you could see where something isn't working for someone, they'll ruminate and they can't exit from it. And this is sort of a pervasive sorts of patterns that you could see going on, where something is said to someone that they can say about 10,000 times themselves, they can hardly turn their brain or mind off, which we always are talking about. Can you get rid of your internal dialogue? Get rid of it, and put things that you drop in the most negative terms you can, because why not? Because then you're going to drop them. What's adversive? Maybe it should smell like cat poop or something, so that you just avoid what that is versus dabbling in with it. But it's an identity of self only through another person present, which is what codependency is. And so that somebody doesn't really have their own self-autonomy through their own self. And so how does this all bear out where somebody becomes an adult? And is it what you've learned, things which can cause you to have good partnering skills, good team building skills, and be good at self-initiating? But otherwise, a lot of disconnection is from one's own autonomic self and automatic self, and a narcissistic personality disorder more is where an addiction is to have to be validated and have to be approved and have to be the center of attention and things. One can take a back seat and let others be and give someone else who might not be able to do something as well a chance to do things and this sort of thing. So you're fully more empowering, and you're more interdependent, where each has self-autonomy and is fostering self-autonomy in relation, versus dependency, as codependency is more in relation, where some addiction typically is. Typically, the enforcer it has some problems with addictions behaviour-wise, and someone helping wants to help, and learned helplessness or codependency is where somebody is putting up with a lot of abuse and not setting boundaries because they just want to please the other, and they could say that that relation or whatever is more important than themselves, which isn't proper healthy condition to be about. But someone's ability to really make something worthwhile and to be able to be really good at reframing and putting meaning and thoughtfulness around any subject versus making something worth less or made worthless, and so somebody is to sacrifice themselves, and the greatest thing then that comes to be is their ability to sacrifice themselves for the taker, which is sort of like a codependent type of a condition that you could look and see. Very common where one has abuse disorder, that some codependency often is going on, which is not true love at all. One's not loving you for the sake of your love within yourself, but loving you for themselves instead. And so you and I, we really go through life and we could have success because you could be picking up whole brain patterning, which is sorting toward and sorting within, being inclusive with your speech and syntax, framing things positively, but in a direction sorting toward versus away from and outside. So one could seek more attachment and things in the way of being, because oxytocin then is released where behaviours are such, rather than cutting everything off, which is very polarising, and being quite stupid by, like, younger ones, especially men. Young men will ask another young man if he wants to fight or something. Quite stupid, because it's such a grovelledness that the young man's gone to, immature like crazy. And these are things which you're teaching kids how to avoid and really be good at resolving conflict, which that's the best form of things where life is itself versus seeking it. So some form of stupidity certainly could be where someone's not going to have any benefit themselves, and certain it is that the other person's not going to have any benefit. And so what would be a reason why anybody would want to participate in that? It's quite stupid, isn't it? But could things be resolved more where intellect is? And that's really the mark of someone that's grown up, whereas those who are real petty, and they'll say, oh, you leaned over my food, or oh, you sneezed, or you did this, you did that. A hypochondriac, crazy, and control freaks, typical. How's it that anybody could ever live with anyone like that? So when you go through life, you reach a point where you really can have seen a lot, and you could really give people a way to be able to live a better life. And so somebody has to be interested, don't they, of course, and where you are, or somebody who has good knowledge, is it that you actually make advantage of that, or is it somebody just listening to stupid dialogue, which, how are they going to actually get anything from that? It'd be wise that you use your time to learn and really grow and download 20, 30, 40 things every day and become a better person because of it, versus you're just spectating, listening to someone else's conversation, but it's really not anything necessarily that you're really learning about. So one really could have unnecessary fear. Well, get rid of that, because you should be able to base jump out of an airplane or walk across fire, and have breakthrough proper experiences so that you really are recognised in your own self of your own inner strength. And your psychological ceiling fits with your physiological capacity. And so one, in whole brain patterning, really you can see them always setting boundaries so that things all work. Like you could say, could you frame things positively? That's setting a boundary. It means that I care that you frame things positively. Somebody wants to have rapport, they're going to start to frame things positive. If they don't, they're going to just don't care about rapport. And this is somebody who's really a control freak. So somebody's just got to be able to eventually just decide what to do, because you can't continue to be in a toxic relation, and where toxic relation is, schemedness exists, and you can be set upon without anybody saying anything to you. This is really a covert narcissist, and they'll do all sorts of things to punish you, and they can have no remorse whatsoever for what they do, and no empathy either, and have passed through life this way. So how bad is that? It's terrible. Those that are listening, it's really amazing that you could learn how to motivate everyone, motivate yourself with learning, growth, achievement, recognition, versus all these other things which just have a built-in escalating zero, where you've got to do more of whatever that is to have a benefit or something, or to feel better or something. Where if you're learning, you're growing, you're achieving, you're being recognised, this doesn't have a built-in escalating zero. You'll participate in this day in and day out. And so an internal generator more is inside. So when you use modal operate as a possibility, like I wonder, maybe it's possible, that's interesting, and these sorts of things to start a sentence, you're getting people choice. And isn't it just how you are when you're focused on care, simple? Your brain is just going to pick up the proper patterning. But when you haven't cared, you don't care, you even tell people you don't care, you tell people you don't want to be here, it's truly incongruent. And a lot of things are said really mean, and one's word is not their bond, and they say a lot of things which is very harmful, just to be polarized and to try to get another to be perhaps less in themselves, so that they could be more codependent, perhaps. And these are the sort of patterns that you could see going on, and yet it's an interdependence, and it's a beautiful agenda where you're practicing more whole brain functioning technique in the way that you're going about things, which those that's listening should look into the work on whole brain functioning. So you've got more self-autonomy, and because you've got interest and pleasure, you're in the frontal cortex, you foster those sorts of things with people around you, so you're getting more out of everything. And you and I, we can do things far more together than we could do alone. And so it's really what went on there, that with personality disorder, is some sort of seated abandonment that went on earlier on, and a codependency that where somebody is trying to put back something which is missing, and becomes addicted to the obsessive compulsive like type of condition to hide an ongoing type of a depression really within, and restlessness, and eventually it causes dopamine and serotonin challenges, and of course it creates sticky, thick mucus for sure, and a young man can be getting old, quick, smart, and not have proper neurotransmitters to actually get into areas of his brain, and so that when he speaks, it's possible, or she, they could put good sentences together and have care, and yet you and I, we all could be listening with our heart, knowing that what was put where words were could be not embellishing as much as what it can or could. So everybody's learning, and give people space and time, and give room inside. And you've got micro expressions. Otherwise, you see, you've got expressions which last about 5 seconds or more, which really are more congruent types of expressions where communication is. And that yet when you could see somebody, they've got inner conflict and hiding that even, and like apparently trying to say something positive or whatever, but it's not going to come across that way because of these micro expressions that you could see absolutely showing somebody's got internal conflict. And then they could be very never have learned how to create comfort for another, and they could be doing things the quite opposite, matter of fact, staring, all kinds of stuff which is intimidating, which who did that but some parent, and so somebody's just picked up that sort of thing and not ever thought about it, and they've just modelled stupidity. Nothing they'll get a benefit from themselves, and no one else will either. And it's the highest form of stupidity that one could have participated in. So obsessives and compulsives, more it is because parts are not integrated, which those parts could be integrated, and micro expressions going on where you could see these little 1 second, more less than a second type of reactions and things, does show that somebody's really overprotective. They had a parentedness that was really overprotective, or the opposite, parent didn't care and was really not very protective proper at all. And so you've got a trauma, a post-stress traumatic disorder where some stress was in the past, and what was the emotions and things that was emitted, and is this been reframed so the parts or whatever it is they're more flowing rather than having a pettiness going on, or a grandiosity about oneself fully wrongfully, and then causing others to be sort of vulnerable more. But being open is being vulnerable, because you can be brave enough to say things which you should, because it's about your own self and care. And this is narcissism, meaning self-love. It's just when it gets overboard, now it becomes a personality disorder. How did it happen? We talked about it. We said that it happened because a surrogate spousal relation was where parenting was, and emotional incestedness was, and so emotional overlay starts to be. And if somebody was given wrong food, they can all have had a lot of mucus. And how did mucus affect your ability to be able to see and this sort of thing? Upper respiratory challenges can have been, and this sort of thing. And it leading to more Asperger types of symptoms where someone hasn't easy ability to be able to recognise and be empathic about how someone else is feeling. And so typical it is where someone doesn't have proper capacity, it show because they didn't do well at school, didn't do really well in social life much, and so self-absorption starts to come to be in those, and they've got to do things and magnify things to get out of some loss which they have, which if you could just reframe the loss, now you don't have to have all that behaviours to try to get something back. A grandiosity of one's own self-image, and a special type of a treatment has to have been, or something. And where you could see those things going on, you can see that it's really someone who's trying to seek power for attention, and they might just have a sort of a false sort of rosy view, but be superficial. But that rosy view often is lost pretty quick over time, because all these patterns which is adversive all start to surface more, and it's very situationally specific to stress, and then because it's state specific to stress. And so practicing whole brain functioning is really what one should do. And so first it is, we're talking, and you could come to acknowledge what an issue is. That's the very first thing which one should do in whole brain functioning. And always be focused on what you could acknowledge. And so now you're accepting, you're in agreement, you see. And now it would be good, the second thing you could be doing all the time is challenging any negative thought that you have and getting rid of those negative thoughts so that you're bringing back more of your self-esteem. And then the third thing which you could be focused to do is to clear away the inner need, where so no need is, and you're not really coming from need anymore, as emotional overlay and everything. And so one can have ease of ability to be able to look within themselves and also look outside in a 50-50 relation, and also orient referential indexing, meaning where you're getting your information from. 50% outside, 50% inside, that's sort of being a balanced being. Framing things positively, letting go of stuff that's adverse, getting rid of your internal dialogue, being relaxed more of your shoulders and your tummy, learning how to eat like life food, and getting rid of all the need that comes about because you don't eat live food, you're only eating dead food, and you could be more empathic when you're sort of able to set boundaries, and you're good at being able to get things. And so all these behavioural personality disorders are cleared away by practicing whole brain functioning. One doesn't have to be defensive anymore, you see. And so it's really more ideal where you can have this inside and you're practicing more. You're going to see that way more things are going to come to you from being lovable than walking around trying to be tough and think that anybody mature is going to look at you and think that you're not immature. It's certain that if you're focused on things which is to grovel, and you would go to a level of groveling on the ground with someone, and you don't have intellect. Most women, of course, are going to avoid a man like that, for sure, because he's got not the capacity really to put a sentence together. He's just going to grovel. So it's a really base level of stupidity, and everybody should recognise more that's the case. And nobody needs to be continuously admired, or they've got to show everything that they do and this sort of thing. It's such a grandiosity that's shown, and it's because inferior, superior is something taken over there, and it's a real show and a term of a struggle that you could see, and where borderline personality disorders are, where someone could have better defense against these things. You're able to listen to programs like this and have pattern recognition, and so all sorts of passive types of conditions like what we're talking about, like passive codependency, can start to be looked at more and cleared away. So it's a personal sense of an over-reliance on emotional psyche of another, or shifting things over to a partner, rather than managing and having that self-autonomy yourself. And it's a trap which really is being in a codependent type of relation, because how self-esteem really is put, generally where codependency is, self-esteem is really being trod upon by the enforcer, because they want dependency, and they don't want you to feel you've got success, that you could go and do other things more in life. And it's something very controlling where someone is, to keep someone under wrap or to control, and exhibit traits more of exploitation and fear, and have a great struggle. Often you could see where any influenceness is, where decision is. And these are all things can get cleared up. It's suddenly somebody could be more practicing whole brain functioning, yeah? They can acknowledge what the issue is. You can really challenge the types of negative thoughts that you have. You can clear away everything which is an unneeded type of fear, so you're not being controlled by aversion. You can focus on being pleasant and interesting and be more in the frontal cortex, and you can be more empathic as a result of being able to have pattern recognition and to be able to soft set boundaries. Yeah. So anyway, I think that might be a good hour of podcast.
Incredible. I'll be reeling from that one. Definitely hit home with a lot of that. Have to definitely listen, like I always do, multiple times.
Yeah. Well, I know there's so many topics for us to talk a bit about, and why not talk about things and be able to get to the bottom of things which you and I and others could live life more abundantly. And things that's about behaviour tend to be amongst the most interesting topics for women, certainly. And certainly for men, that's an interesting topic as well. And so it's a great subject area for people to become more versed in. And why shouldn't all of us be practicing more whole brain functioning by having pleasure and interest? You're stimulating your frontal cortex to be present and your whole brain patterning. And where somebody was in aversion as an emotional feeling, they will have shut down their frontal cortex, you see. And so their faculties inspire creative influence of the future, which should be present. It is, as you've got interest and pleasure and you cultivate this, and this is an outwardly lived meditation. It's not something somebody goes and turns on somewhere, but it's like what you're practicing every day in your meditation as you focus on what does your teacher do, where did your teacher go, what did he or she do, where their feet have been, so you can look and see where the tracks have been, where someone else has been. Yeah. And by looking at the tracks where someone's been, you can understand a lot more about what someone has done to achieve the things they have. And now you can lift your eyes more and be able to participate more because you've got clean feet to walk through a mind. But most people may not have their feet not too clean to walk through anyone's mind. Yeah. So topics that's like this, really to understand more and to clear away and not be caught where narcissistic types of behaviour is, and being able to recognise where that is and be able to make the decisions that can help where something is, versus going back into all sorts of toxic types of conditions and things. Yeah. But most of these things is very learnable. All the behaviours that you see, very conditioned and Pavlovian conditioned, basically. Yes? And why not condition things, which is really excellent, and practice more whole brain functioning and be of care where something is. You're going to have a lot more success by doing this. Yeah. Anyway, mate, I hope that's been a bloody great show. Have you got any questions at all, mate?
Oh, that'd be good. Thank you.
Okay, so the question is about gum. If symptoms exist where gum is like losing gum from a tooth, one reason could be because something could have been done dental-wise. That could be part of something which because the surface where something was put, a ledge or edge exists, which material always would collect between a dissimilar element there, and tartar would form, and that acidifies and slowly but sure itself causes more gum recession. That's one thing. So making sure that plaque doesn't exist, from foodstuffs, which we could talk a bit about in a second. But another thing that where gum recession is always because digestive condition is existed, which is really the gum and the teeth a bit of a sign also of your digestive condition and things. Many in youth could have had things happen to them where the dentist is, and a lot of stuff that goes on where the drilling is and things cannot be proper per se for people's teeth. And what they put in also wasn't very proper because it was not of a material that would be hard enough, and these things, and then also not biologically compatible material. But so today where teeth are, first, you have conditions that you've got to look through where someone could have had work done and the dentistry can have really wreaked havoc ever more, which eventually that will have its effect. But it doesn't have to. You could keep everything that you have. But practicing like food, which one who's listening, they could learn that it's low methionine. So, there is no flesh or insect or fish or birds or anything that's like that, because that food stuff is acidifying, and we do not have a capacity DNA-wise to be able to break foodstuffs down that come from that source. Another thing is where receding gums is because the average individual who has that, they can have lived a life which was not monophasic when they ate. They could have been eating through the day and always had release of various things from the portal vein continuously through the day from what was being consumed. I mean, these things dysregulate proper exocrine and endocrine function within our organs. So things that can be correcting, it's really a condition of digestion and food. And then the other thing that it's a symptom of somewhat is making sure that you're not mouth breathing through sleep at all, and that no mouth breathing exists through sleep. So those are things which, if your mouth breathes, that can really impact tissue and everything of the gums and cause recession of itself, because it's a loss of carbon, which we're supposed to keep our carbon. The only other thing, of course, people talk about is making sure you don't have a brush stroke that's cross over, but more up and down a little bit, somewhat, and be soft where the brushedness is, because a style of brushing teeth can always be that a corner or teeth get more seesaw action across itself in the brushing. So those are things which really can help. Making sure that you've got B vitamins like B12. B12 is produced in the intestine, in the last few inches of your intestine, providing that you have amygdalin coming in, which is B17. B17 is found in 1,700 different fruits and vegetables, but it's very heat unstable. So only that it's not been heated can B12, B17 be there in your body. And B17, which is amygdalin, can be transmutated into B12. And that's how all of us get B12. All the vitamins that you create, most of them can be created by the intestinal flora. And what type of intestinal flora exists enables you to have proper neurotransmitters and these sorts of things. For instance, Streptococcus type of bacteria must be as proteolytic bacteria to exist in the intestine, because they produce dopamine for us, you see. Without that, we wouldn't have dopamine production much. Quite a bit of that is produced in the brain of the gut and contributes quite a bit dopamine, certain. And then in the substantia nigra, which is in the brain, you've got dopamine being made as well. But for instance, digestion and the motility of food through the intestine, that works really good, because when you defecate, you've emptied everything out completely. Your stomach is going forward during the day to be more empty itself. Until then, you would eat again. The longer that you've got a space that exists, the more that your digestive tract would work very well. And these things all cause gums to be, and health of the mouth to be in proper stead, given the circumstance that there could be a lot of compromised stuff like we talked about, from dentistry itself. Yeah. Other things, one more thing. Where someone is a lot of don't, won't, can't, should, try, but, must, only in speech, and never stopped that, or never had thought, wait a minute, I should frame things positively and be positive in my life and be more an athlete for doing such, and be lovable, that these things all cause someone to thrive. Otherwise, rock salt, which is very detrimental to the digestive tract and body, will wipe out and cause cystic fibrosis, which is more a thickening of the fluids. Cortisol raises calcium, and calcium always thickens mucus. And so, and when rock salt and a lot of these milks, which are disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And the worst things that could ever be, just about. You've got people drinking wall, board, plaster, like calcium carbonate, and putting it into all these milks, to make a milk out of it, thinking, hey, it's okay. We've got wallboard plaster in the food, and it's made it thick, and it makes your tea like white or whatever. And you've made it taste reasonable, but it's pretty much disgusting usually. And these are all the milks which are people drinking at the moment, which is horrific. So who is speaking about rock salts being not nutrition? I don't know anyone much, you see. And so, wow, I think the world has really got a lot to learn more about nutrition, but I think the answer lies more in the nutrition area, mate. Yeah.
Makes sense. Always try to just keep cleansing and stay.
Well, yeah, cleansing is being able to not eat more than what you should, only take on the plate what you can eat. When you look and see people and they waste a lot of food, or they'll cook up something huge, a massive amount of food, and people cannot eat it all. It's just over the top and wrong. It's very obsessive. Somebody's trying to get a benefit because they'll help and do things for others, but overdoing things and doing things which others should do for themselves. And when you or I do something which someone who should do for themselves, can have done somebody a bit of a disservice. It's real important that somebody can bring someone along, and they can see that something is existing which they haven't examined and that they can look at, and an answer comes along within some of this, like what we've been talking about.
There was one other thing that he mentioned. I don't know if I would actually even be able to help him, but because he said he has a fissure. So I don't know.
Yeah, fissure. Yeah, fissure. Yes, where somebody has a fissures, it is always because of celiac condition, and a protein is coming in, which the body absolutely needs a rest from, and it's got a serious reactiveness to that food, which is toxic, a nutritional toxin. A food that's been excessive, and something very acid. So fissures always occur because immunity is being lost, and tissue doesn't repair, and tissue must have its north negative, and if pressure exists where it shouldn't be, all sorts of fissures and things like that can occur as well. But these are things which can all clear up. I've seen everything clear up like this on Life Food Nutritional Cleansing, which you do a 42-day program, and you can achieve such great results. You can get rid of the stone in the body, which who talks about that? And so our program, Jub Cell Rejuvenation, is designed to help rejuvenate the body. So despite whatever the condition is, it's the very perfect thing somebody could learn how to, and they do a program which teaches you how to be for the rest of your life, really. Yeah. I personally feel there's a big area, and that nutrition is an area which is, I'm so sorry that it's the worst science probably, and you've got people speaking about a lot of stuff which they could have never ever studied. Yeah, so in nutrition, I'd say that's pretty rife. Shameful, because it's an area as a profession which is extremely important, and probably is more important than a modern doctor. Yes, and since the last scam that's all gone on, most people have lost faith in modern medicine, because the scamdemic was obvious, you see, yeah, and has left people harmed, injured, costed, and damaged.
Yep.
Interesting that when I talk to people, I'll say, do you know if anybody's in charge? And they look a bit daft, Wow, okay. So most everybody, honest, is going to say that they don't know who's in charge. And if you ask them, what's the structure lawfully that where we the people is in charge, they don't and haven't seen what that is, which is these administrative councils which sit above the Bureau of the Legislative Assembly of a state. And that is the way that we as people get policy put, and it's the only sovereign group because you can be only selected, you can't be elected. It is sovereign because it's common law. You didn't get there because some pact put you there, which none of us were involved in. That's not a sovereign body at all per se. But a sovereign court body is really an Article 3 or Article 4 court, and these are the only ones which can look over contract. So what would be the reason why would you think that even like the President is non-stop having Vice Admiralty law, which is the Crown trying him, and they are doing it for themselves always, and only ever putting him under a employee contract. And so you're to be told what to do, and what did you do with this, and what did you do with that. And this is a very low order of things because you've got a captain in charge where discretion is, and you don't have our peers at all in that circumstance. And so whilst we stand by and let the precedent be of the Crown trying a president, what are we saying by allowing that? We're saying, go ahead and run the nation. And we the people are the enemy, not anything out there. Because as you and I, we allow bylaws. Bylaws are laws a private company can make, but that's not international law, and it's certainly not common law. It's supposed to model what that is, but often it doesn't. And so you've got a process where the court is at the moment, Vice Admiralty, which says so many presuppositions which exist, which if you don't rebut those, they are going to be part of your business automatically, which isn't part of your claim, let's say. You're not in your own clothing and not in your own suit. So is somebody going to tell me like the president's getting fried, and you can see the most massive dishonesty that's going on? And just like, what's the reason why this is the sacred cow, meaning it's not really being talked about? The courts are rigged, and they're rigged because first a bid, a performance and a payment bond is going on, and where's that being talked about, and who's benefiting from all of that? The prison bonds, prison court bonds are the most traded sorts of bonds in the world today, and like REIT is owning all these prisons and the court bonds, and these court bonds and this money was actually what went to make up the International Monetary Fund. And so you could just say that all this monies and things is extortion, and consideration was never given to anyone, because while someone else could have just set that off against your Federal Reserve account and made your Federal Reserve account go into debt by saying you had abandoned the issue of you being the holder of the bond, the bid bond, the performance bond, and the payment bond. These are like massive amounts of monies are processed, like when you get a parking ticket, all sorts of things behind the scene. That amount of money is grown through fractional reserve banking, and much more is lent out than what's existed, very Ponzi pyramided out. And when are we going to say stop to negative inductance? What's the reason why someone far away is controlling yours and my credit? And is it because something was never paid off 200 years ago, more than 210 years ago? So first, that's not international law. Why? Well, because you can't hold a nation in bondage for more than 110 years, and I think it's 210 years. That's right. You know, how crazy is that? That's way too long to hold any nation in bondage. God help us. But all those ideas have come about because you've got pledging, an ancient system of pledging, where everybody before you were born, this private company, the state of the state of the state, which owns your BC number and the system there, uses that number to make bonds and to make money, and have used your account to pay themselves, and giving you consideration is giving you the ability to be able to set something off yourself. And so it's all discharged. So the charges are discharged, you see, because every charge is a commercial charge. And if you discharge the charge, no longer does the charge exist. The charges are discharged. And a remedy does exist. And why shouldn't it be that most everybody should be studying the remedy? But an Article 3 and Article 4 court is a procedure which is the best type of procedure for examining if a claim exists or not. And it's certainly not where someone is being taken through Vice Admiralty, which is a guild which is run by the Crown, owned by the Crown. They work for themselves, they work for the Crown, and then they work for the system, and then they look over there at you, and you're maybe third on the list of people that they serve. They straight away jump into, what did you do this, you did that, you did this, you did that, and over all of the things which is about employment, like you're under an employee's contract. And so if you're a United States citizen, you have a bridged right, and because your W-5 form hasn't been filled out properly, you're not listed as the beneficiary, and so you should be. Why shouldn't it be that you correct your status? And what's the reason behind why this is not really being talked about like it should be? Should it be just that you just got waylaid, that someone contracted with you, which is unconscionable with you as you were a baby, and then suddenly, you become adult, you learn, hey, 1913, December 25th, the biggest fraud ever exists. And no one's going to say that it doesn't. It sure does. Historical. And you're pre that moment, meaning you've got rights to property. In 1933, on the 9th of March, you've got House Joint Resolution 192 getting passed, and you've got these bills being passed, and again, fraud, absolute and utter fraud, you see. So are you pre-March 9th, 1933? Are you pre-December 25th, 1913, when the Federal Reserve Bank was formed? Yes. These are all laws which exist still. You and I, we can have not been involved, which that's the enemy, you see. So we've got all these sorts of things going on, which you could think that life could be, we could be living life more in a golden age. And if we can set these administrative councils up, this is the strange attractor. This is what's drawing everyone forward into a future which is a better future. So positively inducted currency should be, no question about it. And that is the real reset. The real reset is you pay your debt and you pay it off, and you republic that debt. You revenue the debt. You revenue it. It's revenue back to we the people. And from there on, you've got positive inducted currency. You've got an account that could help pay for things for you in business, and for your house, and for your education, for your health and family and things as such. If you want to work, you can, and most people probably would, but you don't have to. What that does is it gets rid of jobbery. You can see so many pretended services being offered to people for their own financial gain, basically, which is really the definition of jobbery, really. Yeah. Anyway, we can live in a better world, and I think that would pay attention to all these other podcasts that relate to various things about your health and things, and history. quite a bit of the programs that we do is pretty revisionary. Yeah.
The best.
Yeah. So I reckon that someone should have a session. I do great sessions with people over the phone. The benefit to someone is they could achieve things behaviourally, and they can also achieve things more where health is and restore their health. And it takes a little bit more than just a wham bam thank you ma'am. But somebody could read the program, and I've done everything I can to write that and put it together. So anybody who does the program, they're going to really get a benefit, a great benefit. So the physiological things can be cleared up, because why not that somebody who's interested listening, they could pick up the topic, the podcast on cystic fibrosis, for instance. That'd be very helpful, because now you're understanding a little more about nutrition, which most people don't even know what cystic fibrosis is, or POTS, which is a postural orthostatic standing condition, where somebody goes to stand up, they faint, or they feel dizzy. And how much does sodium chloride and rock salt, part of that, that's so toxic, and other things, which is really not like food. One should learn more. What is like food? Low methionine, low phosphate, attention to enzyme, attention to a monophasic diet more, attention to preparing food so it makes it easier to digest. Of course, it's plant-based. What about if Jeff could do a session? So I think at some point maybe you would love to hook that up so we can do a session. And if you'd love to record it, we can too.
Yeah, I told him I couldn't at this point figure out how to do two people at the same time.
Right.
But I told him I would ask you the questions that he had. So
yeah, just want to do a session, because if he does, you could easily hook that up, and for anyone listening too.
Oh yeah, I'd love to help with that.
Yeah.
That there's spiritual/emotional causes behind the illness. He suspects stress, indecisiveness, and anger. Yada yada. And could you offer any advice to repairing the spiritual, emotional aspects to it?
Yeah. So first, question everything that's negative. And if it's negative, put it in adverse terms as much as you can, because it'll be quick and easy for you to drop things that's like that. It's wise that you drop all things which is at first. There's not a reason why somebody should have animosity toward another. What's that going to achieve? It doesn't achieve anything. And even having any animosity within oneself. But it doesn't mean that something should be like, I'm able to experience every emotion, and when anger would have been, it was because some inner principles was being broken within myself, versus anxious or annoyed or frustrated or in grief. All emotion has a structure, and the same with anger. So if somebody's got 15 different emotions and they can explain each of these emotions, an emotional IQ comes about, where most people could only ever put things in terms of anger, but is loss part of it, is shame or guilt part of it because somebody's not doing the right thing, is sense of desperate urgency to cover things, affect all sorts of behaviours. But if someone practices whole brain functioning, you frame things positive, you focus on being able to verify what you can say, you focus more on active language, you put things in terms of a modal operative possibility versus necessity, you let go certain words, that could be very helpful, because then you could really learn how to frame things positively, and after that then you could bring more of these words back in again. But why shouldn't you be a positive person? It should be that most people could look upon you and say, well, you're very lovable. It's certain that a man that's lovable, and other men love that man. Most men are very strict, actually, really, about leadership and this sort of thing, and rightfully so. Somebody who's lovable, and other men love you, it's because you really do have lovable behaviours and things. And so some people make very good leaders, and other people, just going to be brushed over. And it is behavioural. What's the kind of rapport that you've built where people are, and what's the repeated pattern that they could rely upon you see? Yes? So it's all very well to have a talk and have things be up in the cloud a bit, but can it activate what you're doing in life, and can you bring aboard the things which really make sense to you, and that you can stick and have sticky factor for the things that work, and you can focus your mind where this is, and you can remain open to grow and to learn, and you can be open because you're receptive. And the only way that you could be receptive is practicing an outward lived meditation of bliss by having emptied out thinking. And you feel bliss because of it, because you achieved things. You're achieving things, and bliss naturally flows.
Just naturally.
Yeah, and so now we'll be talking about words maybe. Why don't we talk a bit about the body, like how relaxed is your shoulders in life, for instance? How relaxed is your tummy, for instance? Are you using feeling and hearing and vision so that you're using the senses? Do you have your chakras open because, sound is made more from the belly as it comes up through your head? Or does sound only come from the head, for instance? What's your stress note? What's the note that you skip over when you go through the scale? There's notes, which those two notes can be played more pure and assist to help cause a healing to happen. If it was that somebody could hear what we said tonight today, and we said that frame things positive and begin to do that, because you're going to have a better value. You're going to be practicing whole brain functioning more versus only ever coming from limited mind function. Now, most kids have never heard about this, and they're full of things which is not beneficial to themselves. And so why not drop everything which is not beneficial for yourself, and why not highlight the things which is more beneficial? And why not be there for others as you go to talk? Why not champion them versus someone else is there for you just to be a whipping post, you see, which they're not. How terrible is that? It's really, to go through life and have lovable behaviours. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, David.
All right, mate. I love you, mate. Well, let's do another one coming up here short, mate. Yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Be my honor. As always.
Love you, mate.
Love you too, David. Thanks so much.
Yeah, love you, mate. Talk to you soon. Yeah.